Imagine, just for a second, that your organization is embarking on this massive transformation. I mean, you're spending tens of millions of
Oh,
dollars.
easily. And years of effort from your absolute best people on a technology upgrade.
Right. Easily the biggest in a decade.
Hmm.
There's this countdown clock on the wall, a massive go-live date marked in red.
Yeah, the pressure is on.
But what if, on the day you finally cut the ribbon and launch, you discover you haven't actually modernized anything at all?
That is the nightmare right there.
It really is. What if all that time and money just bought you a much faster version of your old problems? Well, welcome to the deep dive.
Thanks for having me.
Today, we are dissecting the SAP S/4HANA migration. And we're basing this on a really fascinating stack of sources like technical architectural reviews and these brutal implementation postmortems.
Yeah, they are very revealing documents.
They really are. And for most companies, this is treated strictly as an IT replacement project. But our sources argue that treating it this way is a multi-million-dollar category error.
A massive error that will actively sabotage your finance department for the next decade, honestly.
Wow. Okay, so to really understand the scale of that error, we have to look at what S/4HANA actually is, right?
Right. And to be fair, the business case for upgrading is incredibly sound. I mean, it brings in memory processing.
Which means what exactly for the non-technical folks?
So it basically means the database reads data instantly from RAM rather than, slowly pulling it off a physical hard drive.
Oh, okay, so it's lightning fast.
Exactly. It offers this cloud-native scalability. It really is an engineering marvel designed for the real-time digital economy.
And there's always but the danger lies in something else, right?
Yeah, a dimension that is almost universally ignored during the blueprinting phase, and that is the tax and compliance architecture.
Right.
If an organization views this migration merely as like a technical lift and shift of their old processes onto new servers, they are setting themselves up for a complete structural collapse.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because the whole pitch for S/4HANA, the thing that gets the C-suite to actually sign those massive checks, is speed.
Yes, absolutely.
It processes millions of records in seconds. But the research points out that this very feature, that incredible velocity, is actually the catalyst for the collapse you're talking about.
Assuming the foundation beneath it is flawed, yes.
Right. So tell me about the speed paradox.
Yeah, the speed paradox. To grasp why speed is suddenly a liability, you have to look back at the legacy system everyone is migrating away from, which is SAP ECC.
Yeah.
That older system was built for a batch processing period-end world. A transaction would occur, and then it would just, sit in the system.
So it wasn't instant.
No, not at all.
Okay.
The compliance and tax checks often didn't happen concurrently. They happened in batches, usually overnight or maybe at the end of the month.
Ah, I see. So that latency, that delay between a sale happening and the data actually being reported,
Yeah.
that was functioning as a safety net.
Precisely. It gave the finance and tax teams this crucial window of time. I mean, if a sales clerk entered the wrong tax code on an invoice, or if a cross-border shipment had, missing regulatory data.
It wasn't a crisis.
Exactly. It wasn't an immediate crisis. The data just sat there until the end of the month reconciliation.
Right, so a tax analyst could run a report, spot the anomaly, and clean up the data.
Yes, and fix the compliance issue long before anything was officially submitted to a government authority.
Wow.
The sluggishness of the legacy system was hiding the fact that the underlying compliance architecture was entirely reactive. But S/4HANA eliminates that buffer completely. It operates in real time.
So if you take that reactive, fix-it-later compliance model and just shove it into S/4HANA, you aren't fixing the root cause.
No, you're making it worse.
It makes me think of taking a state-of-the-art high-speed bullet train engine and just dropping it onto a 100-year-old splintering wooden railway track.
That is a perfect analogy.
The new engine is incredibly fast, but because the foundation beneath it wasn't upgraded to handle that kind of speed, you were just going to derail that much quicker.
And what's fascinating here is that the real-world consequences of that derailment are immediate and severe, especially when we factor in how global tax authorities are changing their behavior right now.
Right. The governments aren't just sitting back anymore.
Not at all. We are moving into an era of continuous transaction control, or CTC.
CTC, got it.
In a CTC jurisdiction, the government inserts itself directly into your daily business processes. They validate your invoices the literal moment they are created.
Via an API connection, right?
Exactly, via API, before you are even allowed to send that invoice to your customer.
Wait, if the government is validating the invoice instantly via an API, what actually happens on the ground if there's an error? Because there's no Friday afternoon data cleanup anymore.
The process stops dead in its tracks.
Literal.
Literally. Let's say you have a shipment of electronics leaving a warehouse in a country with strict e-invoicing laws, like Brazil or Italy, for example.
Okay.
An employee makes a slight error, just a tiny typo in the tax determination field on the digital invoice. Under the old system, you'd just fix it at month end.
Right, no big deal.
But under a CTC regime, the government server instantly rejects the XML payload. The system won't generate the necessary shipping document.
Oh, wow. So the physical truck.
Your physical truck is now sitting on the loading dock, unable to legally leave the facility.
That is wild. A multi-million-dollar supply chain is halted over a single misconfigured tax code.
Exactly. Organizations that just lift and shift their old compliance architecture into S/4HANA, they think they are preserving a working model. In reality, they are just accelerating its failure to a velocity the legacy system never reached.
That is a terrifying operational bottleneck for any company. But hold on, I have to challenge the premise here.
Sure, go ahead.
You are describing a widely known catastrophic operational risk, and organizations hire the top global consulting firms, paying them thousands of dollars a day to manage these migrations.
Oh, absolutely.
So why aren't these incredibly smart project management teams catching this before they go live?
It really comes down to the organizational dynamics and the deeply ingrained culture of how ERP transformations are governed.
Oh, so.
Well, S/4HANA migrations are almost universally led by technology teams. IT owns the budget and IT owns the timeline.
Okay, that makes sense.
Finance acts as a major stakeholder, but the project scope is carved up into standard, highly technical work streams. In the SAP world, these are known by acronyms like FI, CO, MM, SD.
And for anyone listening who isn't living in the SAP ecosystem every day, what do those actually represent?
Right, sorry. So FI is financial accounting, CO is controlling, MM is materials management, and SD is sales and distribution.
Basically the nuts and bolts of the business.
Exactly. These modules represent the core engine of the business: money coming in, money going out, and physical boxes moving around.
Right.
The project managers view these as mission critical. Tax and compliance, on the other hand, are viewed as an exhaust pipe.
An exhaust pipe, that's a harsh way to look at it.
It is, but they are seen as reporting functions, not operational ones. So tax is usually buried as this tiny sub-work stream deep under the finance umbrella.
I see. So the project leaders, who are probably compensated based on hitting that massive go-live date, are looking at the tax team and asking entirely the wrong questions.
They ask the tax team, like, what bare minimum configuration do you need to let us go live on time?
And what's the answer?
The answer to that question is usually small, cheap, and very short-sighted. The question they should be asking is, what architectural design do we need to survive in a real-time, heavily regulated global economy?
But that would require a massive rethink of the system.
Completely. And because of this dynamic, project teams consistently fall into a predictable cascade of errors during the blueprinting phase.
The sources mentioned 3 big traps.
Yeah. The first and most fatal error is adopting the mentality of, quote, we will handle tax later.
Treating compliance as a phase 2 problem.
Exactly. The sources actually refer to "we will handle tax later" as the single most expensive sentence uttered in an S/4HANA program.
Because later never comes.
Later never arrives with the same budget, the same organizational focus, or the same technical flexibility as that initial blueprinting phase.
Right.
If you defer the compliance architecture decision to some post-go-live optimization project, you are accumulating massive technical debt. You are locking in foundational data structures that you will literally be stuck with for a decade.
Okay, so if a company adopts that handle it later mentality just to hit their deadline, what is the immediate downstream effect on the IT architecture? I mean, how do they actually make the system work on day one?
Well, to make it work quickly, they resort to heavily customizing the SAP core itself.
And that's bad.
Yes. In SAP terminology, this usually means relying on custom Z programs. SAP allows developers to write custom, bespoke code to solve highly specific problems, but they mandate that this custom code must start with the letter Z or Y.
Okay, so it's a namespace thing.
Right. It's a namespace designed to separate standard SAP functionality from your own homegrown solutions.
So the consultants in the room who know SAP inside and out, they just write a bunch of custom Z programs to handle the complex tax logic for every different country because it feels like the path of least resistance.
Exactly. It solves the immediate problem, but it creates a long-term nightmare. Because Z programs are custom, they take you off the standard upgrade path.
Oh, I see where this is going.
Yeah. Every time SAP pushes a mandatory system update or a security patch to the standard core, your bespoke Z programs might suddenly break.
Because they're completely custom to your specific business.
Right. This forces your IT department into massive, really expensive regression testing cycles just to ensure the update didn't destroy your customized tax logic.
Which means upgrades become so painful, so risky, and so expensive that companies eventually just stop doing them altogether. They freeze their multi-million-dollar software in time.
That's exactly what happens.
But wait, if they're customizing the core just to survive, how does that work for a massive multinational corporation? Are they building a different custom fix for every single country they operate in?
And that leads to the final trap, designing for local survival instead of global visibility.
Oh,
You end up with a decentralized approach where the implementation team in Germany builds one custom solution for their specific regulations.
right.
The team in the UK builds another, perhaps using a completely different set of custom tables. The team in Brazil might panic at the complexity of Latin American tax law and just bolt on a completely different third-party vendor just for that region.
And then the group CFO sitting at headquarters tries to pull a consolidated global tax report because they want to know the company's real-time risk exposure
And they can't. They just can't.
because it's all fragmented.
They are staring at three completely different dashboards with entirely incompatible data models. The data structures literally don't match.
But what do?
You can't even put the information together without exporting it all into massive spreadsheets and initiating this manual reconciliation effort that takes weeks.
Wow.
You have successfully implemented the most advanced ERP in the world, but you've structurally locked your leadership out of having real-time financial intelligence.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Because avoiding this chaotic, hyper-customized mess requires a fundamental choice before the very first line of code is written.
Yes, it does.
The sources point out that every single company faces this unstated fork in the road during the blueprinting phase. There are two very distinct architectural paths you can take.
And understanding the mechanics of these two paths is probably the most crucial takeaway for any leadership team listening to this.
Okay, let's hear them.
The first path is the traditional ERP-centric model. This is the default. It involves taking all of your compliance logic, every country-specific tax rate, every rule for generating a regulatory e-invoice format, and embedding it directly inside the SAP core using those customizations we just discussed.
But hold on, I have to challenge this concept for a second. SAP is famously sold as an integrated all-in-one suite.
Right.
The whole pitch is one single source of truth. It feels entirely counterintuitive to suggest keeping your compliance logic outside of the system. I mean, why not just use the native SAP tools the way they were heavily marketed to be used?
Because the nature of global regulation has fundamentally changed. Tax laws and e-invoicing mandates update constantly. I mean, sometimes multiple times a year per country.
Oh, wow, that often.
Yes. So if your logic is hard-coded into the SAP core, every single one of those regulatory updates turns into a massive IT project tied to your SAP upgrade cycle.
So you're stuck.
You are held hostage by your own system. The alternative, and what modern architecture demands, is the decoupled architecture.
Okay, what does decoupled actually mean in practice?
It means keeping the SAP core completely clean, adhering strictly to standard S&T functionality without any of those custom Z programs.
Okay, no custom code.
You take all the heavy lifting of compliance processing, the tax determination logic, the generation of complex XML regulatory formats, and you push it out to an external, dedicated, cloud-based compliance layer.
Oh, I see.
This external engine connects back to your clean SAP core through standard APIs. It listens to the transactions happening in SAP, processes the compliance requirements externally, and then feeds the validated results back in real time.
It's exactly like a modern smartphone. You have your phone's core operating system, and then you have an app store full of individual apps.
That is a great way to think about it.
If Brazil changes its e-invoicing laws, you just download an update for the Brazil compliance app, basically. You don't have to take your entire phone offline for a month of regression testing and rewrite the core operating system just to accommodate one new rule. The ERP-centric model sounds like trying to hard code every single application directly into the phone's motherboard.
Yeah, the smartphone analogy perfectly captures the agility of this approach. With a decoupled architecture, regulatory updates happen at the speed of the law, not at the sluggish speed of enterprise IT cycles.
That's a huge difference.
If a new country mandate goes live, you don't build from scratch. You just activate that country's configuration in the external layer. And crucially, when SAP issues an upgrade, You can install it seamlessly because your core is standard.
There is no labyrinth of custom tax logic to break.
Exactly.
So if the decoupled architecture is vastly superior for agility and risk management, why doesn't everyone just do it? It requires a different mix of people making the decisions early on, doesn't it?
This raises an important question regarding governance. If your blueprinting workshops are populated entirely by IT consultants and a few localized finance managers, human nature dictates they will default to the ERP-centric model.
Because they want to use the tool they know best, which is SAP.
Right. To achieve a decoupled architecture, the global head of tax or the chief tax officer must be physically in the room from day one.
It can't just be brought in later.
No, not acting as an afterthought who simply reviews a completed design document, but serving as a co-architect. The prompt cannot be, how do we configure SAP for tax?
What should it be?
It must be, where should the compliance logic physically live in our enterprise architecture to ensure we remain agile for the next decade?
Okay, so what does this all mean for the broader business? We focused heavily on tax and keeping the government happy, but the sources emphasize that this architectural choice ripples out to dictate the future of the entire finance department.
It absolutely does, because S4HANA is fundamentally a data platform. Its entire value proposition, the promised real-time analytics, the operational agility, it depends entirely on the quality, structure, and harmonization of the data flowing through it. If you merely lift and shift a messy, inconsistent legacy chart of accounts, you are poisoning the well. To unlock S4HANA's true potential, you need what data scientists call a canonical data model.
Okay, let's translate that. What does a canonical data model look like in plain English?
Think of it as a unified Rosetta Stone for your entire global business.
Okay.
It means that a transaction in Germany and a transaction in Japan are described using the exact same structure, the exact same fields, and the exact same definitions.
Oh, I see. So there's no translation needed later.
Right. And a decoupled compliance architecture naturally enforces this. Because all global transactions flow through that centralized external compliance layer, the data is continuously validated and standardized before it ever reaches a reporting dashboard.
And having that unified, pristine data foundation is the absolute prerequisite for the next major evolution in finance, which the research refers to as the Internet of Agents.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the Internet of Agents represents the shift from automated finance to autonomous finance.
Autonomous finance.
Wow. We are talking about deploying specialized autonomous AI agents capable of executing complex workflows without human intervention.
Like what kind of workflows?
These agents will continuously audit account reconciliations, enforce internal compliance at machine speed, and perhaps most importantly, optimize VAT cash flows globally.
Okay, let's dig into that mechanism. How does an AI agent actually optimize VAT cash flow? It's not just a magic trick, it's doing something specific with the data, right?
It comes down to identifying trapped cash.
Trapped cash.
Yeah. In a massive multinational, millions of dollars in input VAT taxes you paid on business purchases often go unclaimed.
Why?
Because the data on the incoming invoices is too messy, fragmented, or localized for human teams to confidently process and claim the credit from the government.
So it's just left on the table.
Exactly. But because a decoupled architecture creates a canonical data model, an AI agent doesn't have to guess what a field means or translate a local code.
It can just read it perfectly.
It can instantly scan millions of lines of standardized, globally uniform VAT data across 50 different countries.
That's incredible.
And it instantly cross-references those standardized fields against current tax laws to identify perfectly valid, unclaimed tax credits that a human team would take months to spot. It turns compliance from a sunk cost into a cash-generating mechanism.
But those AI agents are completely useless if they are starved of clean data.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't just point an advanced AI at a fragmented, heavily customized database full of Z programs and expect it to find insights. It'll just generate errors, won't it?
Exactly. AI requires a structured environment known as a governed intelligence hub.
A governed intelligence hub.
Yeah, which is a repository of clean, canonically structured data that is completely separated from the noise of raw, messy ERP transaction processing.
Right.
If an AI agent has to compete for access to unstandardized, localized ERP data, the logic just breaks down. A decoupled compliance architecture inherently builds that governed, clean data layer.
That is a really profound realization. I mean, if you are listening to this and your company is in the middle of this migration and the project team decides to just port over the old hard-coded legacy architecture to save time,
you're in trouble.
You aren't just making life slightly more annoying for the tax department. You are actively slamming the door shut on your company's ability to utilize artificial intelligence and autonomous finance operations for the next 10 years.
Absolutely.
You are structurally locking yourself out of the future because the foundation is just incompatible with AI.
That is the ultimate hidden cost of the category error we started with. S4HANA does not magically solve your architectural problems.
Right.
It acts as a massive magnifying glass. It dramatically accelerates whatever foundational logic it inherits.
Oh, that's a great way to put it.
If you have a clean, decoupled foundation, it accelerates your capacity for innovation. But if you have a tangled, customized legacy foundation, it just accelerates your operational failures until the system breaks.
And the window to actually fix the foundation is incredibly narrow.
Extremely narrow. An enterprise only undertakes a transformation of this magnitude with this level of budget, executive attention, and technical flexibility maybe once every 10 to 15 years.
It's a rare opportunity.
Yes. Doing it correctly, establishing a decoupled architecture and a canonical data model requires significant upfront investment and rigorous cross-departmental alignment between IT, finance, and tax from day one.
But it pays off.
The return on that investment is a resilient architecture that scales effortlessly with every new continuous transaction mandate and every new advancement in AI.
And the alternative.
The organization that rebuilds their past will find themselves constantly redesigning their system under intense pressure, just bleeding budget to keep up with the status quo.
Which brings us right back to that scenario from the beginning. You
Yeah.
were spending millions of dollars and years of effort on this massive upgrade.
Yeah.
I want to leave you with a final provocative thought to mull over. If your organization, or any organization you consult for or work with, is going through a massive transformation right now, who's actually sitting in the blueprint room?
That is the million-dollar question.
Are the people making the highly technical decisions today inadvertently locking you out of the innovations of tomorrow simply because they are asking the wrong questions? Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Stay curious, keep looking under the hood of the systems that run your world, and we'll catch you next time.